Well, good morning and welcome to another day of Bible study as we continue on through what is now the final week. We're in the home stretch. We're in the middle of the final week of this Bible study Party On, where we've been looking at the food places in the Bible. We've been looking at the festivals. We've been looking at the feasts, and we've been looking to see really why there is so much discussion about food and hospitality in the Bible. And what we've learned is that God sees the table and hospitality as being central. The table may well be the most important piece of furniture, the most central thing in God's house, in God's design for the world. He began in Genesis with eat freely. He ends in Revelation with drink freely. He sets up a remembrance of him, an ongoing remembrance and worship around the table. I think it may well be more important to him than the pulpit, than the pew, than the baptismal font, maybe even the Ark of the Covenant is the table. And so today, whenever we come to our Bible study, we're coming back to the table. We're also coming to a story that is very familiar, which you may not recognize from the title or from the passage in Luke 19, but most of us will have some context for this passage. But before we get there, I just want to say thank you to everybody who is a part of Christ's Table. You can find out more about Christ's Table by going to christtable.today. And I know that I say this regularly, but I just very much want you to know how thankful I am for you, for your participation, for your involvement, and especially for those of you who are generous. Your donations are incredibly important to making this ministry be able to continue. And I'm so deeply thankful for the ways in which you give and support Christ's Table that I in turn want to give as much as I can back to you. And so we do that mostly through resources. And anybody who gives in the month of June, and today is the last day of the month of June, will receive this book for free here in a couple of weeks. And I'm intentionally not showing you, here's the, I kind of showed it there. I'm intentionally not showing you the cover of this book because I kind of want to be a surprise to you. But this book is really just kind of continuing the theme that we've been talking about over the last few weeks in Party On. It's going to talk about food and the importance of food and hospitality. It's going to talk about it a little in relation to the Bible and to faith, but it's also going to talk about it a lot in how food and the table is central in families. It's going to talk about it in neighborhoods and cities, in relationships. And so it's going to be a really great follow-up to what we've been discussing. And it is a super easy read by a super great author. And we're going to take a bit of a different rhythm with this in July and in the beginning of August. We're going to change up the way we do Bible studies. We're going to hit pause on some things and take sabbatical. We're going to add some new things into that. And summer, whenever everybody's schedules and everything is crazy, anyway, it's a great time to do that. And it's also a great time for me too to take a bit of a sabbatical from the day-to-day and do some other things and spend some time with family as well. And so this is going to be a great summer thing. I'm looking forward to sending this and a few other surprises in the box to you here in a couple of weeks. And so anybody who donates today, and if you donate tomorrow as well, even though it's the first day or two into July, I'll still make sure that you get one of these, christtable.today, and sign up for the email list there. And if you would make us a part of your regular generosity plan, then we would appreciate that as well. God is doing great things, and you only have to hang around a little bit, look at the comments, see the feedback, to see what God is doing in our ministry. And there are huge things coming in the fall that I'm so excited about. In fact, part of July and August is giving me the opportunity to put final touches on all of those things so that we can go into the fall doing everything that I think God's calling us to do. So without any further delay, let us go ahead and pull out those Bibles and head into Luke 19 for that familiar story. And this story was always fun to me as a kid. But as I have learned more about the story, it has become even more interesting and even more exciting to me. And so the kid-like understanding of it and then the adult understanding of this passage just continues to make this one of my favorite places in the Bible. One of my favorite moments, honestly, with Jesus, because we see so much about him, and it's It's one of those stories that is just truly funny. There's just so much humor that happens in this story. And we see that so often with Jesus, is that he's just plain fun. And the fun has been preached out of Jesus, and the fun has been written out of Jesus. And time has covered up so many of those fun things that were absolutely obvious to the original readers of the Bible, but which we miss. And we should recapture those things. Jesus was a party animal. He really enjoyed life and enjoyed other people, enjoyed having fun, and enjoyed a great party, a great celebration. So Jesus enters Jericho and makes his way through the town. And already there is humor here. Jericho was close to Jerusalem, and Jericho was called the City of Palms, a beautiful location. And it was also the home to more than half, to most of the religious priests. Priests did not work 24/7, 365. They spent some time on duty and some time off duty. And so it was a requirement for them to not necessarily live in Jerusalem, because they didn't need to be at the temple every day, but they needed to be near Jerusalem so that they could get there easily whenever they were on duty. And then when they were off duty, they didn't need to be in big city life. They could be somewhere else a little bit more beautiful and a little less hectic. And they, by and large, chose Jerusalem. Now, there is an expectation whenever somebody of religious stature, like a rabbi, especially a rabbi of the stature of Jesus, is passing through town, there is an expectation that hospitality would be extended by the residents of the city, especially the priests, because they're doing the work of the rabbis. They're in the same field. And there is an expectation of the acceptance of that. And so it is certain that Jesus would have been extended an invitation by one priest in Jericho, or perhaps the consortium, multiple priests in the city, on his way passing through to stop, to have conversations, to have a meal. But Jesus seems to decline. And there's the humor. Jesus enters Jerusalem, making his way through the town, in a sense, dissing them. Now, they're probably going to give Jesus a pass. He has too much to do. That's okay. We have other things to do as well. We understand. We'll take a rain check and catch you the next time around. But there's more to the story. There's a man there named Zacchaeus, and he was a notorious person in the town, and in all of the wrong ways. There's a man there named Zacchaeus, and he was not just a tax collector. He was the chief tax collector. Now, as I've said before in this study, tax collectors were the lowest of the low. They were scum. They were taking money in taxes that Jewish people only thought tax money should go to the priests and to the religious systems, to the temple. And so in this city, more than any other city, there would be that mindset. And so the fact that they were being taxed for an occupying army in Rome that was going to support King Herod, that was going to support Caesar himself, that was going to support the military and all of those things, and not going to the temple and the priests in this town had to be especially egregious, had to be especially hated. And so this is like ground zero for hatred of the whole tax system, where Jewish people would turn traitor, would turn coat on their countrymen and fill their own pockets with money that was gotten by supporting this thing that was totally and utterly wrong in the Jewish mindset. And so anything that they were able to extort above the money that needed to be sent to Rome, they could keep for themselves. And as chief tax collector, this is a bit of a pyramid scheme, in that Zacchaeus isn't just making money on his own, but he is making money off of all of the other tax collectors, which meant he was at the top of the food chain of the pyramid, and he had become very rich on money that people felt should be going to the temple. So he would have been hated, not just loathed. So Zacchaeus tries to get a look at Jesus as Jesus is dissing these priests walking through town, but Zacchaeus was too short to see over the crowd, and likely didn't want to get anywhere near the crowd for fear of being stabbed in the back by some zealot or somebody who would stuff the knife back into their coat and never be caught. Not that anybody would care anyway, so Zacchaeus keeps a safe distance, but was too short to see over the crowd from his distance. So he runs ahead and he climbs a sycamore fig tree beside the road, for Jesus was going to pass that way. So Zacchaeus exits the city gates on the path towards Jerusalem, towards the direction that Jesus is going, and it was lined with sycamore fig trees. And these are huge and enormous fig trees. They are absolutely massive, and their leaf cover is incredible. They are dense. Their branches are relatively low to the ground, and so Zacchaeus would have been able to scurry up into one of these things. But then once he was up there, he would have been able to be extremely well hidden. No one would have been looking for him up there. And even if they were, he would be able to get a vantage point easily where they wouldn't be able to see him, but he would be able to see out of the tree. So he finds this vantage point, and when Jesus ends up coming by on his way out of town, many of the townspeople probably still with him, trying to get him to come back to town to enjoy the hospitality. It's getting late, Jesus, take a load off. You don't have to spend the night. Just spend some time with us. Jesus stops and he looks at the tree and looks directly at Zacchaeus and calls him by name. I love that. Zacchaeus, he said, get your down out of the tree. I must be a guest in your home today. And the people in the city now, they are beside themselves. First of all, they're beside themselves because this idiot chief tax collector, is up in the tree hiding rather than being a man and standing up out here where everybody else is. If you want to see Jesus or have a conversation with him, do it out here. You know, maybe if you weren't doing what you were doing, you wouldn't have to hide, Zacchaeus. Maybe you should rethink your entire life and your entire story and everything that has brought you to this point if you're feeling guilty for not having to be around us. Sounds like a lot of Christians, doesn't it? Maybe if you weren't doing something wrong, you wouldn't have to feel guilty. Jesus sees Zacchaeus, calls him by name, and in that moment you have to think that everybody in that split second between Zacchaeus and quick come down is thinking, this is about to get good. Jesus is about to settle this score. There's no way that Jesus is not going to have something to say to Zacchaeus. We've heard what he said to the other religious leaders for what they do detracting from God. Boy, what this man does has hurt God more than any Pharisee has ever hurt God. Can't wait to hear this one. Get down out of that tree. They're like, yes, Jesus. Finally, he's going to get his due, and it's going to be right out here in public for everyone to see. I must be a guest at your home today. I wasn't expecting that, Jesus, the crowd must have been thinking. First, they're probably thinking, oh, well, okay, he wishes to do it in private and make it very good. But then they're thinking, oh, so yeah, that's not okay. It's not okay for him to share table fellowship with somebody like this, because this is implying that he accepts Zacchaeus to go over to his house to share a meal, to break bread around the table. He might as well climb into bed and sleep with him that night. This is too intimate. This is too relational. Zacchaeus does not deserve this, and Jesus should not be being seen with people like this. So Zacchaeus quickly climbed down, and he obliges. He obliges the invitation and takes Jesus to his house. Get this. In great excitement and joy. Not fear. Not worry. Not even regret. Take some time. Explore that reaction to somebody who has knowingly done so wrong. Think about that. But the people, verse 7 says, this is an understatement, were displeased. And there it is. He has gone to be the guest of a notorious sinner. Not just a sinner, but a notorious sinner, a slur. And not just a notorious sinner, but to be the guest. It's interesting. Jesus actually invited himself over, so maybe Jesus becomes the host in that situation. I don't know. But either way, he's sharing a table with Zacchaeus. Meanwhile, Zacchaeus stood before the Lord and he said, I will give half my wealth to the poor, Lord. And if I have cheated people on their taxes, I will give them back 4 times as much. Now, I want to jump back here because I want to see. It doesn't actually say. I was trying to see whether or not Zacchaeus makes this statement at the meal or whether or not he makes this statement in front of everybody else publicly. I think you could probably read it either way. Either way, he essentially promises to give half his wealth to the poor, Lord, and if he's cheated people on their taxes, he's going to give them back 4 times as much. And so he essentially does this, open hands, and says, I'm going to give half to the poor, and the other half I'm going to take in anybody whom I've cheated on taxes. I'm going to give them a 400% return, 4 times as much on those taxes. And so Zacchaeus has gone above and beyond restitution. And I don't think either that he is trying to buy forgiveness from Jesus or trying to buy anything from Jesus, because Jesus has already given him acceptance. By sharing table fellowship with him, Jesus has already given him forgiveness. And so Zacchaeus already has all of these things. And yet having all of those things changes who Zacchaeus is. This is something that happens so often, I think. Christians want people to change. Christ followers want other people to change, and then we'll accept you. It just doesn't work that way. It has never worked that way. Accept people. Love them for who they are and where they are without any expectation of change. And you'll be surprised what that kind of love ends up doing to people. We've said this before. It's why Jesus practices an open table, and why Jesus expects his church in their homes and in their worship gatherings to practice an open table of true love and true acceptance. Not love the sin, but hate the sinner. I said that backwards, didn't I? Not love the sinner, hate the sin, but just love the person. And don't worry about the sin. You get your sin too. You got enough to worry about with your sin. Just accept people. Just love people. Don't worry about what in them may be right or may be wrong. Stop that. Accept them. Jesus accepted, forgave, invited Zacchaeus into his world. And Zacchaeus on his own, certainly I would say with the Spirit, determines where his path goes from there. It wasn't the priests who were living next door who worked with Zacchaeus to determine what in his life needed to change from then on. No. It was Zacchaeus in concert with the Spirit. And look what happens when it happens that way. Jesus responds, salvation has come to this home today, for this man has shown himself to be a true son of Abraham. For the Son of Man, Jesus is speaking of himself there, came to seek and to save those who are lost. A few things here, and then we'll go. I know, my time's already short. Don't turn down a random dinner invite. It may be Jesus. Somebody invites you out to a meal, or more in line with this passage, somebody invites themselves over for dinner at your house, think twice before turning them down. It may be Jesus. It may be your greatest hope and your greatest salvation that is barging its way into your life at the most inopportune, most unwelcome time, and from the most annoying of people. Think twice. It may be Jesus who is knocking on the door of your life, inviting himself in. Think twice before you turn down a random dinner invitation. Also, don't spend time inviting religious people to your table. Invite the non-religious. Invite the irreligious. Invite the people who are not being accepted, who aren't being invited to other tables and to other communities. Invite those people. It's not so you can invite the religious people to your table, but Jesus doesn't spend a lot of his time eating with the religious people. We see him spending most of his time eating with the non-religious people, with the irreligious people, with the people whom religion has said you're no good. You have to change before you can be accepted. You're worthless. Your identity is wrong or is anathema to God. The way you're acting and your behavior is abhorrent. Clean yourself up, and then God accepts you. Jesus says, yeah, no, I'm going to accept you because I made you. I created all of this mess and glory and wonder and celebration and chaos and all. Come as you are. Come as you are to dinner. Invite the non-religious, the irreligious, the people far from God, the people who hate God. Learn from them. Listen to them. Cry with them. Rejoice with them. Don't avoid the religious. Just don't spend too much of your time there. And sometimes, and we'll end with this today, you just have to break the social norm and invite yourself over. Sometimes you just have to push yourself into people's lives. It's weird, right? To invite yourself over for dinner. But sometimes you got to take the first step. And this is what Jesus does. This is exactly what Jesus does. Jesus essentially invites himself over for dinner at Zacchaeus's, because he knows that otherwise Zacchaeus may not be able to see the radical truth of love and acceptance and forgiveness, because he's only seen the opposite. Sometimes you just got to break the social norm and invite yourself over to somebody's house for dinner. What's the worst that can happen? Until tomorrow.